let's talk about Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. We did our live stream like we did last week. We did like 2 live streams, which were broken up into 700 videos that we posted on our channel. I don't know if you noticed if you went to our YouTube channel. There's about 700 individual videos. Thanks to Glenuccio for posting, being relentless and editing these videos just to like sort of salient points, like little short, little 5-minute, addressing particular topics. Really great stuff.
Yeah, like I noticed that. I was like, wait, did we shoot that much that he could just drop like all those different videos down?
I counted. It's 700 videos. It's 700.
Okay.
No, I love it, dude. Glenuccio kicking ass on that. But I want to talk about like what this movie was supposed to be before Chadwick Boseman's death. And here's why it's important. This weekend, the movie was a hit, right? I don't think anybody's surprised that Wakanda Forever, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever was going to be number 1 at the box office. That's not a surprise. And it performed as expected. It didn't exceed. It didn't. It just was as expected. Like, hey, it did very well. I saw it again. I think, Dante, you saw it a second time. We both saw it a second time. Alan dropped off his daughter with her daughter's boyfriend to see it a second time.
Well, I had seen it with her before, and then the second time she saw it, and like I said, fell asleep.
Okay, cool.
Wait, Alan, you trust your daughter to be alone in a theater with her boyfriend?
No, I don't. Not at all.
Like you weren't sitting in the back watching him?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the other father I want to become too. The raincoat, yeah. Being called out, yeah, no.
You realize that's like the number 1 place where people make out.
I know. Yeah, I was young too, so I know what happens. I know what he's thinking. I know what he's thinking.
Like, I'm not trying to fuck with you. I'm just saying, like, that's.
I know. It's like
you're better than me, man.
It's like she just grew up overnight. And
all right, if anyone sends in a super chat in the next, like, you could probably name it like Alan's daughter's boyfriend or something, like Alan's daughter's. Forget it. All right, forget it. Let's not focus on this. But look, so we've seen you and I, Dante, have seen the movie more than once.
Yeah.
I think it was an easier pill to swallow, knowing what you're going into, knowing that T'Challa passes away. But I think what's really interesting was on the weekend that it opened, recast T'Challa is trending.
Right.
Like, the movie's out and people are saying, walking out of the movie, and the 2 big complaints that I heard was there's not enough men in this movie. And I'm really glad that women are saying this now. There's not enough.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot more women are saying that they noticed the lack of male energy in this movie.
100%. And then the other thing is that people really want to recast T'Challa.
We all know that his death had to be addressed. It had to be addressed, right? There's no way you could start Black Panther 2 with some new T'Challa and not mention anything about Chadwick Boseman, right? Like, that wasn't going to happen. And we all knew that wasn't going to happen, right? So it's kind of like rocking the hard place situation, right? It's like you want to be respectful, but the story has to continue. So I understand kind of both sides, where I understand recast T'Challa, but I also understand why they did it the way they did it.
Well, we should actually, you know what? Let's get the chat involved in this. Let's just do a simple poll on YouTube right now. Recast T'Challa ? Yes or no? You got to pick one or the other. Alan or Glenuccio, who could?
Yeah, I don't know how to set those up. I screwed it up last time. So,
Glenn, do you know how to do that? All right, we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna figure out. We'll do a poll and release the results before the end of the show. But let's go to your comments and questions before I want to bring up an article about what the story was supposed to be before the death of Chadwick Boseman. But let's go to your comments about this. I does the panel all agree that T'Challa should be recast?
I kind of understand, and I kind of go with the choice they went. I think the only reason we're having this discussion about recasting T'Challa is because they screwed it up in the movie.
Yeah.
So I'll still stand by my guns on that one.
So you
And
think
then
you think not recasting him was the way to go, just to handle
I
it the
think
way
so.
they handled the movie?
I would say two things. One, not recasting was the right decision. The other right decision was they should have waited 5 years after Chadwick died and then make a Black Panther movie and then recast it then. That way, I think that's enough time to get the stigma of Chadwick's death out of our minds.
Right. Let's go to
or what they could have done was kill off T'Challa, but maybe find a new male Black Panther to replace him, maybe even temporarily, right? Because they at least need one to fight Namor, right? So maybe T'Challa's gone, but at least you have another strong male taking on the mantle of Black
yeah,
Panther.
and that was the problem with the first movie because you had T'Challa, M'Baku, and Killmonger, and two of them were not available to be Black Panther at that point. And I don't think you could. I don't think M'Baku could be Black Panther just because he was the only male left from the first movie.
I want to share this article. There's an article that came out. It's an interview with Ryan Coogler, the director, talking about what Black Panther was supposed to be before the tragic death of Chadwick Boseman. So the article is one of those, like, of course, it's overly long, as a lot of these things are, but I want to just get right to the quotes from Ryan Coogler. So I'm just going to read bits of this and then we'll talk about this story. So you already know the context, right? Chadwick Boseman died of colon cancer at the age of 43. 43, that's young. And but there was a story being written for Black Panther 2. And Ryan Coogler, he wrote in remembrance of Chadwick Boseman. I spent the last year preparing, imagining, and writing words for him to say that we weren't destined to see. But he goes on, he says, the tonal shift, I will say, was less of a shift than in casting. Okay. These quotes are sort of out of context. I'm just going to jump right to them. There were other characters for sure that we considered including. Namor was always there. So it was always planned to be Namor. The tone was going to be similar. The character was going to be grieving the loss of time. So this is like Endgame, right? Like 5 years. Coming back after being gone for 5 years. As a man with so much responsibility to so many, coming back after a forced 5-year absence, that's what the film was tackling. He was grieving time he couldn't get back. Grief was a big part of it. So there you go. And then in final form, okay, all right, we already know that. Who the protagonist was the flaws of the protagonist, what the protagonist was dealing with in their journey. All of that stuff had to be different due to us losing him and the decisions that we made about moving forward. So there's not a lot here. There's not a lot in this, but the idea of grief. First of all, I love the idea because I don't think they fully dealt with the blip. It just happens, in Endgame, and then between Endgame and Infinity War Endgame, it just happens and that's it. It just seems like I don't know. The fact that this movie dealt with that, I think, would have been much more interesting because I don't think it's been dealt with sufficiently in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Gentlemen, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a better storyline. I mean, I like that idea of what happens when your king is gone for 5 years, and now he's back, and now you have this threat of Namor out there. That's really great storytelling, and it goes to show that after his death, the movie was rushed. I don't think he had enough time to spend really working on the story and getting the story right. And then also, we mentioned this before, the movie's clearly a COVID shoot, and so they're hampered by all the COVID restrictions, and I'm pretty sure they gave him less money to do this because of all that. Because the movie definitely felt a lot cheaper than the original, and I think ultimately after hearing all this, they should have postponed this movie to allow better production and a better story to develop from it.
Dante, what do you think?
I think it's okay. I'm not as on board with that storyline. I think I do agree that it would have been interesting to maybe see how T'Challa is dealing with like now he's been gone for 5 years, and the world nations have all kind of, in a way, gathered against Wakanda. Like that would have been a more interesting story. Thinking that he's gone, that they can just plunder Wakanda for vibranium, and kind of building a story around that. I think it could, because then you could have brought in things like, and not to convolute it, but you could have some elements of like the Thunderbolts. You could have like all these different elements of, kind of these world governments saying, hey, well, you have something we want. The king is gone. Let's go in and get it,
Mhm.
And I think, to me, that would have been a kind of a more interesting story. And yeah, and all the while, T'Challa dealing with being gone for 5 years, But I don't think we needed Namor in this. If they were going to go with that story, then we wouldn't need Namor. It could have just been Wakanda versus the world in a way. You know what I mean?
But the idea of not Shuri, Black Panther fighting Namor, right? Like T'Challa fighting Namor, that I would love to see.
Yeah.
But we're never going to see it.
Right. But here's the thing. I would want him to fight a different Namor than what we got in the movie.
Right. You mean the Namor from the cartoons?
Or at least just someone who looks like they can kick your ass. I'm sorry. I never felt that threat from Namor in the film. Like I never felt like, oh yeah, this guy is a badass. And that was the problem for me. You know what I mean? Like if they went with a different direction and have a Namor that looks like he will, whoop your ass, then that would have been something to watch. But that's not what we got.
See, I don't think it's that
we got dad bod Namor.
Yeah. I don't think that it necessarily is that he didn't look like he could kick your ass. He didn't act like he could kick your ass. And that was to me the biggest problem with the casting of Namor.
And then a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people complain also that the way they were going to defeat Namor is they were going to have him basically put him in an air fryer. Effectively. That's what they do. And I know every person I know that gets an air fryer, tell me if this is happening to you. It's like they have it's like a come to Jesus moment, like a religion now, an air fryer. I get it. I will get an air fryer at some point, but my God, I don't need to be constantly pitched air fryers. But effectively they throw him in there and it's like he's going to be air fried alive or something. Like the way to defeat Namor is just to get him dry for a while. Like,
yeah,
I thought that was
didn't Aquaman have that problem early on? He had he can only be out of the water for a certain amount of time, or
yeah, but that was like back in the 70s, I think, man. Like I don't think that storyline, or maybe even the 80s. I think they killed that like a while ago.
Look,
and Disney could have gone into some sponsorship deal with an air fryer company.
Look, the best Aquaman to me is The Deep on Amazon Prime.
I agree.
Okay. So Alan Horkin says close the poll. More than half have voted. That's probably as good as it's going to get. Yeah. Alan, what is thank you, Alan. Alaning.
Okay, I've ended the poll.
Of the poll.
It was 96% yes, recast T'Challa, and 4% no.
Wow. Okay, that's how many votes total?
I think it was like 300. I ended the poll and now it's disappeared. So
that's okay. Most people.
I'm not even surprised by that number.
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
And again, I think to me a lot of it's driven by the fact that if the movie was better than it was, I think the result would have been the same in terms of who won, but I think the numbers would be different.
Look, we're going to keep talking about Black Panther: Wakanda Forever just because I think that I think it's really important. It's probably the last big tentpole movie this year. I mean, there is Avatar, but I've literally spoken to people that said I have no interest in seeing Avatar 2.
I don't. Actually, I have no interest.
3 hours and 10 minutes. Okay. 3 hours and 10 minutes.
Man, this might be controversial to say. I didn't really care for the first Avatar.
I don't think that's controversial at all.
I'm like,
I don't think it's controversial.
I didn't really care for the first one. So
yeah. I mean, I held off seeing Avatar until a month ago, until it got back in the theater and I could see it in 3D. Other than that, I have really no desire to see the movie.
It might be the most overrated movie of all time.
It's the best 3D movie of all time. I will say that.
I think that's I like that. I think.
That might be fair, I guess, but it's a one-time watch at most.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can't call this a review. I have to call it an early reaction. Early reaction, and it should be short.
So one thing for sure about Wakanda Forever that I noticed the second time I saw it,
Yeah.
which I didn't, I guess, pick up the first time, there was some pretty bad CGI moments in there.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
like I didn't pick it up the first time, but the second time I'm like, shit, I am noticing a lot of bad CGI.
Well, it's
That's what I'm saying. I think this movie, because of COVID and the timing, he got a much smaller budget than he got with the first one.
But also the other thing, one of the things they do to cover up bad CGI is two things. One, dark. And the first half of the movie is so dark. After they get, past his funeral, the movie is so dark you can barely see what's happening.
Yeah, I agree.
That's to cover up bad CGI. The other thing to cover up bad CGI, rain. The first Godzilla movie, not the first Godzilla movie, but the first Godzilla movie of the Monsterverse, right, with Warner Brothers, it rains like the whole movie. It rains the whole movie. It's to cover up bad CGI. It's a trick. The movie suffered from not having, we needed some male energy. Look, fine. In fact, I really felt like the balance was very good in the first Black Panther. You had strong male characters, but you also had every person brought this up in a review or when they commented on the first Black Panther movie was, wow, there's a lot of great like side characters. Shuri always got love. Like there were a lot of great like side female characters. They were great. But I think the balance is so off that the absence, I think, is felt.
Yeah. Well, it was intentional too. I mean, if you look at the marketing, Disney did go out of its way to do the women of Wakanda.
Right.
There is Wakanda cosmetics that came out in conjunction with the movie. So there was definitely an effort to make this a film for women, and which is fine. That's their decision. It's just, were you expecting the revenue to be different, or were you expecting the revenue to be a lot less?
Right.
And I mean, I'll go ahead and say this, man. Like the movie definitely had its problems. Would I rank it up there as being like the worst MCU movie? Because I've been hearing stuff like people say shit like that. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You're saying that Wakanda Forever is worse than Thor 2 or that it's worse than Captain Marvel? Like, not at all. It's not nearly on that level of bad, because the difference is at least there was a story with Wakanda Forever. It has some issues and blatantly so the second time you watch it. But I wouldn't rank it as the worst MCU movie. It's not the best by any means, but definitely wasn't the worst.
But it's definitely low tier.
Oh, right? Low tier for sure, yes. But to call it the worst MCU movie, nah. Come on.
Right.
So better than Eternals or worse than Eternals?
Oh God, see, I didn't even bring Eternals up because I don't even count that as an MCU movie. That was some bullshit.